Good morning from WKYT News. We welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers. I'm Bill Bryant. A little bit later, an update on the Bluegrass chapter of the American Red Cross's efforts in helping deal with the disaster left behind by what was Hurricane Harvey. We'll also talk about a telethon airing later today on WKYT. But first, State Senator Whitney Westerfield is here. He is already a declared Republican candidate for Kentucky Attorney General in 2019. Westerfield narrowly lost his bid for Attorney General in 2015 when he came up only about 2,000 votes short, and Democrat Andy Beshear went on to assume the office. Westerfield, who is the Senate Judiciary Chairman, has launched this campaign early, saying Kentucky has to find solutions to what he calls a horrific drug crisis. In the state Senate, Westerfield has worked on juvenile justice and dating violence, among other issues. In the coming months, he'll be one of the lawmakers having to face up to Kentucky's huge pension shortfalls and deal with a state budget that many say will be among the most challenging in modern history. Senator Whitney Westerfield is here with us, and we appreciate it. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me on, Bill.
We'll make note that you made the trip up for the interview and you're going back. I mean, running for statewide office 2 years out is not an easy thing to do.
That's part of it. It's a lot of fun to be able to see the state and meet folks and get out there. But I wanted to make sure people knew that I was serious about campaigning. I wanted to have more time. In 2015, I announced in January and had roughly a 10-month window to go up against who was effectively raising money, the sitting governor of the Commonwealth. And I don't have that opposition this time, but I wanted to have ample time to raise money, to make every Lincoln dinner I can get to and every festival I can get to and meet as many Kentuckians as I can to share my message and hopefully convince them I'm the best candidate for the job.
You got 49.9% of the vote in 2015. Has that been tough to deal with?
It was tough for a day or two, but sometimes you win elections and sometimes you lose them and you move on. And I had a job to do as a legislator. I've continued my time as Senate Judiciary Chairman, and I had an aggressive agenda in 2015 while I was running. Had another aggressive one last year in 2016, immediately after the election. I had work to do, and so I didn't waste a lot of time with pouting and being upset. I went about my business.
You were urged to contest the election, to really make a big deal out of that, and you decided not to. Do you hope that you get some benefit from that?
I actually hadn't even given any thought to that. I really have. I've put that election behind me, apart from the regret and disappointment that I feel the people of Kentucky haven't been given the best effort from the AG that they could have been given. I hope I get every benefit that I possibly can, and if there's some goodwill that I've earned in that, then so be it. But that's not something. I didn't do it for that reason. I did it because we need to move on and keep going.
The opioid crisis keeps getting worse. Yeah. We know that. Many say that our attempts to jail ourselves out of the problem is not working, or in fact is a complete failure. Some laws were passed even this year in 2017 to try to deal with this. Does Kentucky just have to shift some resources in that direction that we have not been able or willing to commit before?
We have to spend our time and our effort in two big places, and we do need to punish those who are dealing. And we've actually done some things. Some of the bills that we've passed in the heroin bill in 2015, in this year's House Bill 333, increasing penalties for traffickers, creating the crime of importation in 2015. And I'll remind viewers that law was put into effect less than 48 hours after it was signed. It hadn't even been codified yet in the books, literally, but it was made use of by the state police in northern Kentucky. But we also have to double and triple and quadruple and then some our effort towards treatment. Had an opportunity to speak about some of the bills and work that we've done in Kentucky with legislators in Vermont in an informal meeting in a hallway at a conference a few weeks ago. And they asked, Whitney, has the work you all have done, has it done any good? Has it made a dent? And I thought long and hard for a moment. And I said, maybe just a dent. In the heroin bill in 2015, we put $10 million new towards treatment-related initiatives in different places between prosecutors and the defense and Kentucky ASAP. In last year's budget, we re-upped that and then some. And all that it shows us is that there's that much more demand for care for people that are struggling with addiction. I had a meeting that was encouraged by a conversation I had with Miranda Combs right here, based on experience she had talking with folks in northern Kentucky. We have heard reports, and then I've heard from EMS folks in northern Kentucky firsthand that they're making 2 and 3 service calls per shift to the same address. They're going to some of these places administering Narcan to someone who's overdosing, and the family member who's using it too asks them to leave a dose. We have this problem isn't getting any smaller, and it's got to be given more attention. And both of those initiatives, punishment for those selling it and trafficking in it, and help and care for those suffering under addiction, both have got to be emphasized.
What is driving the demand? I mean, how do we, don't you have to stop it where it starts?
You do. There's a supply side argument here. We're not doing enough at the federal level to close the doors to what a lot of the substances that are coming in from China through our northern and southern borders, but a lot of it's coming from mainland China. It's being fentanyl and carfentanil. It's being pressed into pill form and made to look like opioids. As the Attorney General, there needs to be much more aggressive activity towards the makers of these drugs, perhaps even towards those prescribing the drugs, and work with policymakers to make sure that the right policies are in place, like this year's House Bill 333, to try to cut down on how many prescription meds are in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And we use more than most, and this country uses more than everybody else in the world by orders of magnitude. There's no doorway that should be left unopened to try to address it.
One of the new laws limits the supply of some medicines that people can pick up, and you know, so
with some exceptions, it does.
Right, which means though that all Kentuckians are being asked to sacrifice some, but sometimes you have to do that, right?
Sometimes you do, but those exceptions are pretty broad and cover what we hope are most of the Kentuckians that would otherwise be stuck with dealing with these extra burdens. So we hope we've addressed that issue with those exceptions, but we have to try something. You know, part of the bill in House Bill 333 increased penalties, took us back to pre-2012, 2011 and House Bill 463 that now Secretary Tilley sponsored. Took us back to penalties pre-463, and there were some people that were really unhappy with that. Is that backtracking? Is it reversing our course? And some can argue that it might be, but it got almost a unanimous vote. It may have passed eventually unanimously, and it passed the Senate unanimously the first time through, because we've got to try whatever we can try, and we aren't doing enough yet.
The current Attorney General, Andy Beshear, also calls for more aggressive efforts on curbing drug abuse. He says that he is coming forth with a lot of initiatives. How do you differ? Where do you think he has fallen short?
He's not in the rooms and having the meetings and discussing with policymakers the best way forward, or people on the front line. With respect to the General, I believe he's doing things wherever there's a camera available or a reporter that can cover the story. And I think that's doing a disservice to the people of the Commonwealth. Just like the General Conway before him, I'm frustrated that the occupant of the Office of the Attorney General doesn't engage with policymakers constructively about how to address this, what policies are needed. I'll tell you this, I've served as a senator now for going on 5 years, and I've been chairman of the Judiciary Committee for that whole time, since my first day on the job. In the last 3 weeks, I got my first contact with the AG's office about a legislative issue. That's a legitimate issue, and we're going to address that. I think we've already got a sponsor for it. We're working on that language.
Senator, is he invited in? I mean, given that
my door is open.
This is a legislature that tried to take a lot of his responsibilities away and shift those over to the governor. I mean, that was proposed and nearly passed.
He is always welcome as any member of any part of the government or any frontline member that deals with these problems. My door is open. If you go back and look at every bill that I've worked on, I pride myself on the reputation I've cultivated of working with stakeholders, even the ones that I vehemently disagree with on policy, because they've got a valuable perspective. And I can't just be in an echo chamber. Let's hear from people that don't always agree with us. My door's always been open to him. It was open to General Conway before that. And it'll be open after this, regardless of what campaign unfolds. If he even runs. I don't know that he'll run for Attorney General
Well,
again.
that's my question. He is not known if he'll run for re-election or for governor. He indicates that he would like to stay in public service. Do you have a preference as to whether he's your opposition, or would you rather run against you know, an unknown
I'm indifferent.
candidate?
I'm indifferent about that. I believe that I'm the best candidate for the job. I know what my arguments would be if I run against General Beshear. Some of those arguments are going to be the same regardless, because they're about the overall vision for what the office ought to be. We haven't talked about it, but one of the things that continues to be underutilized in that office is the cybercrimes division. I give credit to General Conway for establishing it, but we're not doing nearly enough. When I was running 2 years ago, and I don't know that the office has changed in size or scope, there were only 4 investigators in there, maybe 5. And they're tasked with assisting law enforcement agencies around the Commonwealth for a growing risk to both youth, their parents, and senior citizens, all Kentuckians, in a growing, exponentially fast-growing threat of cybersecurity.
Is the office adequately funded to hire more investigators?
That particular office, it's not, no.
Yeah, I mean, but does the,
there's no part
the state
of
budget give them enough to do that?
There's almost no part of state government that's adequately funded, and that goes to the bit here at the beginning. You mentioned the pension crisis we're dealing with.
Well, I tell you what, we're going to talk about that. I want to do that. Let's take a break. We'll be back. Whitney Westerfield is a Republican state senator from Hopkinsville and a candidate for Attorney General already in the 2019 election. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers on WKYT as we visit with State Senator Whitney Westerfield. He's the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Republican of Hopkinsville. He's running for Attorney General, and he has already told us so. And you're already raising money, organizing, collecting endorsements
yes,
for that at this point. Attorney General Beshear has sued the governor several times, particularly challenging his right to dissolve and remake university boards that he says need some independence from direct political governance out of Frankfort. Do you agree with the idea of testing out whether these staggered terms are, as are written into the law, are to be held up, or that the governor has a right to do that?
I agree with what we voted on in the legislature, which I think renders his legal challenge moot. We addressed the issue regarding not just the University of Louisville board, but all public university boards through both Senate Bill, I believe it was Senate Bill 7 or 12, I'm drawing a blank now on the number, but we addressed the mechanism by which those boards should be filled with their members by the governor and how that's approved by the Senate. I'll tell you my biggest point of frustration there, Bill, is that he's fussing about this now. And it goes to the point where I feel like a lot of his challenges, and he's got the authority to challenge the chief executive. And if I'm the AG and Governor Bevin does something that he's not supposed to do, he should expect a challenge from me.
So you're assuming he's running for re-election?
I'm assuming, but I have no idea.
Okay. All right.
But the question is not about whether or not he can or should challenge the chief executive of the Commonwealth. I do think, however, some of his challenges have been politically motivated. The fact that he's been asked whether or not he's running, but still hasn't made a decision yet still takes statements and makes statements about what he's going to do, certainly lends to there being some motivation there. If he's not going to run, say so and move on, for governor, that is. But in that particular case, I guess I'm frustrated. Where was the crying foul about the fact the board wasn't lawfully put together in the first place? It didn't meet the membership standards it was supposed to have when General Beshear took office on day one. But no challenge and no fussing there. In fact, I don't know, there were a handful of university boards that didn't meet the standard, and General Conway didn't fuss about it at the time. Now, when Governor Fletcher was the governor, then everyone fusses. And then General Stumbo did.
Will you guard against that if you're, would you be as tough on Republicans as you are on Democrats? In fact, I go to this question. Should the Attorney General be a partisan office?
I wouldn't have any problem with it being nonpartisan, but right now it is, and it's a constitutional office, so unless we change the Constitution there, that's what we have. It shouldn't have anything to do with partisanship, and even if we made it nonpartisan, there'd still be either a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent that holds the office. But the person who holds the office should conduct themselves and carry out their duties without regard to party, without regard to loyalties or ties to this group or that group or whatever. But we see that. We see this Attorney General picking and choosing which pieces of legislation he's going to support instead of supporting all of them, that the duly elected members of the General Assembly pass by an overwhelming margin. The ultrasound bill being at the top of that list, the 20-week ban on abortions being at the top of that list, the right to work legislation, which again, he disagrees with, but he's not going to defend when it's challenged or as it's being challenged. So I want an Attorney General that's going to as justice demands, be blind in the carrying out of their duties.
All right, the legislature faces a likely special session this fall on the pension crisis. The state owes tens of billions of dollars.
Yes, sir.
That is not on hand to pay out those retirement checks. Some strong medicine has been recommended by this independent consultant that was hired by the governor. It includes eliminating cost of living adjustments for current retirees going back to the 90s, moving up the retirement age for most state employees to 65, and even law enforcement to 60 or so. Where is all that likely to go?
Well, now that we've got that final report, came out on Monday of this week, now that we have that in hand, we're able to read through that. I didn't see it before it was announced on Monday in the Public Pension Oversight Board meeting, so I've been reading through it this week. We're going to look at all those recommendations. We may do some of them. We may do none of them. I don't know. And it wasn't just the governor who decided to hire this firm. The legislature, in a vote of 137 aye votes out of 138 to 1, 137 to 1 in the legislature voted to hire an independent consultant. And this group has done this. And frankly, given us medicine an in-state group may not have had the nerve to give us. We're facing dire financial straits. We continue to struggle with our budget cuts that we had no choice but to institute in last year's budget to help make that record payment towards pensions, that $1.28 billion payment we made. As we move forward, we're going to have to continue that sort of investment just in payment toward those, the ARC and then some, I think. But if we don't make systemic changes to all the different funds as they're arranged, then as a colleague of mine in the Senate said, if we struck oil under the Capitol grounds today and all the funds were immediately flushed today, 20 years from now or whenever that oil well dries up, the funds would be just in the same shape they're in. We cannot afford it, and it cannot be sustained. Before I joined the Senate in 2013, already there was at least one fund liquidating its principal assets every month to make ends meet. It cannot be sustained.
Do you fear a wave of state retirements by people who fear the changes will affect their checks?
I know that risk is there. I don't know that I fear it, but I know that there are state employees, because I've heard from them, both in my district and out, who have talked about how, and rightly so, this decision, whatever we decided to do, is going to affect them. It's going to affect their family and their career decisions. And they're all at different places and points in the career spectrum, beginning or near the end of their service to the state. I've had one in particular, a friend of mine who I met as a prosecutor and worked closely with as a prosecutor, who's decided to put in his notice, and that was before the report came out. We've tried to help people feel a little bit more calm and comfortable about things because we are taking a measured approach. The governor, the speaker, and the Senate president all promised that the bill wouldn't have an emergency clause. So we're going to see what it says, and people are going to have plenty of notice to know how it's going to affect them in their careers before we decide to move it in.
Interesting months ahead.
Very and difficult,
yeah.
But that's the job you sign up for.
Senator, thank you for coming. We appreciate
Thanks for having
it.
me.
All right. And we're coming back with an update on Kentucky efforts to help the areas hit worst by Hurricane Harvey. That's ahead on WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers from WKYT. Kentuckians are responding to the disaster left behind by what was Hurricane Harvey. Much more help is needed and will be. This recovery will be long-term. Tawanda Owsley is here from the Bluegrass chapter of the American Red Cross. Kind of let us know what is going on. We do appreciate you coming in.
Thank you so much.
Literally, as we were taping this, the rain was hitting.
Yeah.
We have seen the tremendous needs in the Texas area,
Absolutely.
of course. And of course, we're all focused there. Also, though, in Kentucky this weekend, with the remnants of that tropical situation, we've had some issues here.
Absolutely. Right now, we're continuing to assess the situation as the storm is moving north. We are paying close attention to our flooding in our area and in Kentucky. We are expecting to have heavy rain this weekend, so the Red Cross as an organization is always prepared. So we'll continue to watch the situation and monitor it very closely to make sure if we need to make any sudden conversations around shelter or anything like that, that we're prepared for that. So,
what does the Red Cross do on the ground? You know, when something like this is going on and you arrive on the scene, what is done? So people out there who are giving to the effort understand.
So what's happening right now in the area, in the Louisiana and Texas area, is rescue efforts. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that everyone is safe. So we're going to seek shelter for those folks that need shelter, and then we're going to feed them, and we're going to make sure that their basic needs are met. So search and rescue is the #1 thing that we're going to do to respond to disaster. And then immediately after, as folks are starting to move back into their homes, we provide tools for them to kind of clean up tools, resources that go in helping with the recovery efforts.
So how can people out there who see this going on and want to help in some way, how can they be assured that their donation to the Red Cross will go to direct needs?
Thank you for asking that. We continue to segregate dollars. When we have large hurricanes or disasters, we segregate those dollars to make sure that they go to the relief efforts. We maintain a very, very low overhead, so 91 cents on every dollar will go directly to the area. The other dollars or the other monetary contributions move toward helping with transportation needs, getting the folks there that need to be there, the volunteers there, the safety needs. So we make sure that as much of the dollars that are given go to the relief efforts.
Is the Red Cross, obviously is in many cases right there just behind the first responders, but is it long-term for the Red Cross now, or will the rebuilding be turned over to others?
No, we are committed to the community, to Texas, to Louisiana, and we're there for the long haul. So we definitely plan to be there through, we know locally we'll be there through the end of the year or as long as the recovery effort lasts. This could be months, this could be years, but the Red Cross will always be there to help and support.
Let's talk about the volunteers, the people who have stepped up to go, and it has been amazing.
And
not just go, but help here as well in other ways.
Absolutely. In the Kentucky region, we're up to 50 volunteers that we've sent to the area, and we are still in need. Right now, the biggest need that we have are those professionals, those mental health professionals. Of course, anyone that goes through a traumatic experience like this could use that comfort of having the mental health professional helping them deal with the situation. So the need for volunteers right now are mental health professionals.
I also understand some nurses have gone this.
And clinical leaders, yes.
In a situation like that, you know, there are licensure requirements state by state. Is that suspended in a situation like this?
I think it's more understanding that's given in a situation like this, and we're able to provide, and like I said, it's more the ability to handle the situation and handle the traumatic experience that those residents are experiencing and being able to consult.
This takes tremendous teamwork to coordinate. How is this done on this national level?
Well, you know, we have a local office here, and then we have a regional office throughout the state, and we're in constant communication. We're on calls every day on a national level, on a regional level, to assess what's going on and provide support. The good thing about the American Red Cross and being a national organization, while we're helping Texas today and Louisiana today, we hope that if a storm happens here, that folks will help us. So that caring spirit that goes across the humanitarian efforts of all of our country is what we are here for. We
know we're watching another hurricane develop right now. I mean, you know, the one that is coming into the Caribbean. Right. Does that, you know, do you plan ahead for that, or you just react when it happens?
Well, we try to plan, you know, we have very strong systems that are monitoring the situation on a close basis, and we try to begin preparing for things like that. And some of the things that we do to prepare is to make sure that we do have locations that we could have shelter if we need shelter, make sure that the supplies are there. We were preparing for Harvey prior to it coming, and I think we were more prepared than ever for this storm. We learned a lot from Katrina as an organization, so we often prepare in advance.
You do blood drives. Has that been something that's been necessary in this particular situation?
We have done some blood drives on a local level. We're not necessarily in need of that right now. The thing that we did in preparation for Harvey is we did stockpile some blood in the area and in the Dallas area so that we could get it there pretty quickly. So that's not an urgent need at this time.
Tawanda, we have a lot of divisions and angst in this country these days. We all know that. What do we learn about ourselves, though, in a time like this when there's you know, disaster that just seems to pull everybody together?
You know, I think we learned that we're all the same at the end of the day, and that we all step up to help each other. I think the compassion and the humanitarian efforts that are going on are amazing. You see us all gathering together and galvanizing around helping our neighbor, which is what we're here for and what we hope that others will do for us.
And what does it say about those who, you know, in some cases have gotten their bass boat together and gone, as we had the case of the one gentleman that we reported on, John McGivens from Kentucky.
Yeah, that got in it. Yeah, and I think that we're seeing more of that. We will say that, you know, there are some safety concerns, so we're not encouraging folks to do that every day, but it just shows that people care and they want to do something to help. I think the biggest way that anyone can help right now is to make a donation. You can text Harvey to 90999 and make a donation. It gives an automatic $10 donation to the relief efforts. Like I said, we're continuing to rescue, we're continuing to search for families, we're continuing to shelter people. Those numbers continue to increase, and we expect more of that this weekend.
WKYT teaming up with Coach Cal and the Red Cross and others, and this afternoon we'll be having a telethon, 3:30 until 6:30 on
Sunday.
This is running on Sunday, right? So it'll be Sunday afternoon, 3:30 to 6:30. It'll be an opportunity to learn more about what's going on and for people to donate.
Absolutely, and we encourage everyone to call in. Coach Cal is really excited about this. He helped. This is not his first time doing a telethon. This is his third telethon, and the telethon that he did to support Haiti raised over $1 million, and we were really proud of the work that happened then. We hope to get close to that number this weekend, so we do encourage everyone on Sunday to tune in, and we're grateful for you all to partner with us at WKYT from 3:30 to 6:30 and make a donation.
And going into this weekend, about $1 million already raised.
We've raised over $1 million to date in the Kentucky area, so that's just our folks here. So thank you to our community for stepping up and being responsive and being supportive.
All right, and hopefully folks can do more again this afternoon. Tawanda, thank you. Appreciate you very much for coming in and for all you're doing. And we want to thank you for joining us for this edition of Kentucky Newsmakers. Again, don't forget the telethon with Coach Cal and some of the WKYT team and the Red Cross and others, 3:30 until 6:30 this afternoon. Hope you enjoy your weekend, your hopefully extended weekend. We'll have the latest for you on WKYT this morning. We start bright and early this week at 4:30. Have a good week ahead.